Welcome back to the fifth part of our special series on President Park Chung-hee's assassination. This is Sanjay Sharma and you are tuned to our special program Reading Korea in Rhythm. In the first four parts, we talked about various assassination attempts on President Park's life, the profiles of the people involved in the incident, the reasons behind the incident, and the details of the assassination. Now, in the remaining two parts, we would put the incident in perspective and focus on what happened when the dust settled a bit. And thereafter, we will deal with two critical questions. First, was it really feasible to attain democracy as wished or claimed by Kim Jae-Kyu? And the second question, was this assassination inevitable? So in this episode, we try to examine where did all this chaos lead to. The incident can be summed up in just one word: le théâtre de l'absurde, or the theater of the absurd, a post-Second World War style of absurdist fictions showing several dimensions like a meaningless existence, the unreasons of the world in which humanity is lost, loss of purpose, and communication breakdown. When the head of the intelligence agency, whose sole raison d'etre was to support and sustain the president's authoritarian rule, decides to eliminate him, then perhaps this is what the French philosopher Albert Camus must have meant when he used the term absurdity in the context of the myth of Sisyphus, denoting the human situation and absurdity of being. I quote, "A world that can be explained by reasoning, however faulty, is a familiar world. But in a universe that is suddenly deprived of illusions of light, man feels alien, a stranger. His exile is without remedy, since he is deprived of the memory of a lost home or the hope of a promised land. This divorce between man and his life, the actor and his setting, truly constitutes the feeling of absurdity." Unquote. In the theater of the absurd, despite being hopeless and desperate, characters resist and struggle, not because of the quest to exist, but as Camus opines, because of the feeling of absurdity, the term that he could never ever assign a core meaning, since there exists none. Hence, he talks of not absurd or absurdity, but the feeling of absurdity. Given the complexity of the assassination, the controversy still lingers on both sides of the coin. I subscribe to the way it has been described by the chief investigator, Mr. Lee Hak-bong. He says it was too careless for a deliberate act and yet too elaborate for an impulsive act. So succinctly put. Let's take usual concerns one by one. As soon as people came to know about the assassination, the first question in their mind, and justifiably so, was about the true intentions behind the incident. During the military rule, as one could understand, all relevant details were classified. And given the principle of bounded rationality, there was no way for ordinary citizens to know the real facts and make a judicious judgment on the matter. But with the democratization of Korea, especially after the recordings of KCIA chief Kim Jae-Kyu's final statement was made public in October 1996 by Shindonga, a monthly magazine, and most recently after the audio leak of the real hearings and court proceedings, people started asking for a re-evaluation of the whole story. For many people, it was a prima facie case of a murder motivated by personal ambition and grudges. They called him a traitor who deliberately killed his best friend who trusted him so much. The fact that the authoritarian structure remained intact and continued for many more years, even after President Park was gone, did not help the argument that KCIA chief Kim Jae-Kyu wanted to pave the way for democratization. On the other spectrum, some truly believe that his sole intention was the realization of liberal democracy. They agree that he was a key member of the regime. Nonetheless, they say he hated excessive power, and the way things were moving, he had no other option to end this 18-year authoritarian rule protected in the Yushin constitution. They quote his insistence to the president, "Kaka, 정치를 대국적으로 하십시오," meaning, please make the politics all inclusive. Underlining conjectures, they say nothing suggests that he knew what to do once the president was killed. He quickly left the place of incident, which was under his control, absolute control. In the moving car, Kim Jae-Kyu asked his assistant Park Hong-ju if it would be better to go to KCIA headquarters or army headquarters. Can you imagine? Chung Sung-hwa, the army chief, intercepting his words, suggested, "I would rather go to the army headquarters." And Kim Jae-Kyu did not question it. We can visualize, irrespective of the final outcome, he would have bought more time for himself if he had gone to the KCIA headquarters instead. Another indication of his unstable mental state was that he could not even put on his jacket and shoes while leaving the place. He borrowed the shoes of his assistant Park Hong-ju. It is reported that he never ever killed anyone by his own hands prior to this incident. As per the testimonies of his family members, he was very compassionate towards younger ones and respectful towards senior or elderly ones. He was no fickle-minded person who would act recklessly. After the incident, he asked his younger sister, and I quote, "Instead of praying for me first, please pray for the kids of the president who lost their father because of me," unquote. And this is interesting. Even among the Supreme Court judges, there was a minority opinion from the 3rd Criminal Division judges that considered the post-assassination movements too clumsy to be for the purpose of rebellion and called it just an accidental murder of a natural person. But in the end, according to the majority vote, the death penalty for rebellion against Kim Jae-Kyu was confirmed according to the judgment of the appeals court. Recently, it has been reported that a tape, which was recorded illegally by a security guard, has been released for the first time in 40 years, which provides vivid details of the trials and threats to the lawyers and some sort of abuse of the judiciary. When and if it is available in public domain, it would surely enhance our understanding of the whole incident. And here we need to take a moment to appreciate the legal aspect of the matter. In the light of these reports and the minority opinion of some of the judges, how critical do you think is the role of dissent opinion in the adjudication process? It would be a worthwhile exercise to contemplate over it, as it had a severe impact not only on an individual life but also on the future of a nation. I was reading somewhere that recently in May 2020, Kim Jae-Kyu's family filed a request with the Seoul High Court seeking a retrial for him on the basis that the original investigations or trials were illegal or that he had been tortured. So this was about the public sentiment and opinion on the incident. The next issue was about internal security in the wake of the power vacuum. As soon as the pieces of the puzzle were put together, Chief of Army Staff ordered Major General Chun Doo-han to arrest Kim Jae-Kyu and investigate. But Chun Doo-han had a different game plan. He arrested the Chief of Army Staff Chung Sung-hwa too on charges of conspiring with KCIA Chief Kim Jae-Kyu to assassinate the president. Chief of Army Staff Chung Sung-hwa was later released. All involved in the assassination were executed. KCIA Chief Kim Jae-Kyu was hanged on 24th May 1980. And you remember Presidential Secretary Kim Kye-won, who fled after the shooting, was also sentenced but was later released in 1982 as he was found more irresponsible than the conspirator. I will talk at length in the final part about how this temporary power vacuum was quickly filled by the Major General Chun Doo-han. Amidst this chaos, imminent external threats were also the concerns. When the US forces came to know about the incident, they addressed it as an internal matter of Korea and did not anticipate any emergency situation, although as precaution, they upgraded their alertness only one level higher than the usual. In addition, to prevent North Korean forces from any enthusiastic misadventure in this state of chaos, an aircraft carrier was moved closer to Korean waters and 2 AWACS aircrafts dispatched by the US. And then comes the question, what happened to the women? Well, needless to say, it became simply impossible for both of them to lead a normal life again after this incident. For a very long time, they were both barred from public life because of a long series of investigations in the case. And later on, for model Shin Jae-sun, after numerous failed attempts to find work in the modeling industry, she decided to give up, remarry, and migrate to the US in 1983, where she wrote a book on her experience, Kuguse Kunyoga Isonne, meaning the girl who was there. It was published in 1994. To offer a glimpse in her mind at that time, I would like to quote a small piece from the preface of the book. And I quote, 긍정동 사건 이후 내 인생의 주제는 불신과 고독이었다. 불신과 고독에 지치다 보니 무관심과도 지나치게 되었다. 그러나 나는 나를 믿는다. Unquote. I translate. After the Kungjongdong incident, this is a place name, my life was all about distrust and loneliness. As I grew tired of distrust and loneliness, indifference became my friend. But I believe in myself. Recalling her impression of President Park in those last moments, she said, and I quote, 독재를 하기는 했지만 경제적으로 나라의 발전을 많이 이루고 국민을 위했던 분입니다. 사건 현장에서 정상으로 피를 흘리면서도 나는 괜찮아 라고 한 말을 잊을 수 없습니다. 죽는 순간까지 의연했던 모습이 눈에 선합니다. 카리스마가 넘치는 분이었습니다. And I translate. Although he was authoritarian, he achieved a lot of economic development and served the people. I can't forget his words, I am fine, despite bleeding profusely from the gunshot. His resolute posture until the last moment is imprinted in my mind or in my eyes. He was charismatic. As regards singer Shim Soo-bong, the other lady, she admitted in 2012 that after the assassination, she had been confined in a prison and then held in a mental institution for nearly a month before she was released. She was banned from TV and radio until 1981, fearing that her song would evoke sentiments among people. And she was kept under observation for many, many years. Later in the mid-80s, she could resume her life as singer, but by then, so much water had already flown in Han River, as she suffered a great deal of depression for a very long time. She puts, quote, wish I were known more as a singer than as an eyewitness to this dark chapter of our history, unquote. And finally, people tend to be curious about what happened to KCIA. Well, as you can imagine, it was obvious that KCIA too would undergo transformations after the incident. On 13 June 1961, the KCIA or Chungang Cheongbobu was reborn from the Korean Counterintelligence Corps, which was formed during the Korean War. After President Park's assassination, as part of a series of reforms instituted by the Fifth Republic of Korea, Chungangcheongbobu or KCIA was renamed in 1981 as Kukka Anjon Kiwekbu or Ankibu, meaning the Agency for National Security Planning. Its status remained the same as before, meaning it was a cabinet level agency whose director would have accountability and direct access to the president. Later in 1999, it was officially renamed as 대한민국 국가정보원 or Kukchongwon, the National Intelligence Service, NIS. Well, so after all these details, I'm sure you must be feeling, wow, that was quite a story. Though there is so much more I could include in this theme, but keeping the length in mind, I would like to conclude the series with two key questions. First, was democratization really feasible as Kim Jae-Kyu intended? And second, could this assassination have been avoided? These are basically anybody's guess. Researchers in the field of politics, strategy, business, and diplomacy pigeonhole these perplexing questions in the CAUV category, CAUV, complex, ambiguous, uncertain, and volatile. Let's try to unpack them as best as possible, one by one, in our last part, 6 of this series. This is Sanjay Sharma, and you are enjoying our program Reading Korea and Rhythm. See you very soon in our last episode on our special series on President Park Chung-hee's assassination.